Before factory farms and supermarkets, there was the first food system of hunters and gatherers. Animals were hunted for meat, and the edible plant life was found and foraged. There was no such thing as instant ramen or fast food drive-thrus that could provide an abundance of delicious calories in seconds. Yet everywhere you go today, you're surrounded by aisles of pre-made and conveniently packaged foods, making it increasingly more difficult to find products that haven't been overly processed by mankind. But how did we get from then to now? What started the need for processed foods and led to the amount that surrounds us today? About 12,000 years ago, the development of agriculture began, and since then, the technological advancements such as irrigation and the Industrial Revolution led us to produce large quantities of food for whole civilizations. However, with the ability to provide for large amounts of people came exponential growth in populations that food production couldn't keep up with, which led to periodical famines. The First World War caused food shortages due to the amount of farmers joining the army and other events that happened during the war. Countries started rationing food, and soon after came the Great Depression, which shook the economy so hard many people could barely afford to buy food, and as a result, many Americans were hungry and malnourished. However, after the Second World War came the introduction of chemical fertilizers and pesticides that greatly increased the amount of crops farmers were producing. In addition, Earl Butz saw agriculture as a way to produce large amounts of cheap, profitable food, and essentially he told the farmers to produce as much food as they could, even if there weren't enough people to buy it for the sake of profit. But in the process of finding new ways to produce food at cheaper quantities, the nutritional value of food went down tremendously. For example, the introduction of high fructose corn syrup into food production replaced the need for imported sugars and could be easily mixed into products since it came in a liquid form. This led to an increase in the amount of sugar in most foods, which is a huge contributor to diabetes and obesity. Obesity is not just a problem in America, and as other countries continue to westernize and adopt diets similar to the classic American diet, the prevalence of the epidemic strengthens. Furthermore, obesity is linked to diseases such as coronary heart failure, which is now the leading cause of death in the world. Obviously, this is a stressing problem, but from a philosophical perspective, is this ethically wrong? Is it wrong for businesses to increase their profits at the expense of public health? Some argue that in a free market society, moral equality is achieved since no one is able to impose their will on others and make them do something they don't want to. Therefore, if someone doesn't want to pay for overly processed foods, they don't have to, and if everyone did that, the health of all could take a turn for the better. But just because we give people the freedom to do what they want, it doesn't mean what they're doing is right. If large food corporations started murdering innocent people, it wouldn't be considered ethical, even though they are given the freedom to do what they please. This is why I would like to bring up the philosophical concept argued by Peter Singer, who is a famous utilitarian. Singer argues that if it is in our power to prevent something bad from happening without thereby sacrificing anything of comparable moral importance, we ought morally to do it. This shows that at the end of the day, a free market society is often more ethical than a socialist or communist society that dictates what is bought and sold. However, it urges those in charge of large food corporations to start focusing more on the nutritional value of food and less on the amount of money they will make by producing cheaper, empty-calorie products. James Quincy, the CEO of Coca-Cola, makes about $18 million a year, and Coca-Cola itself has a net worth of about $80.83 billion. Large food companies such as those have the resources to find ways of making food more nutritious while still profiting from the hard work they do. And based on Peter Singer's theory, they ought to do something instead of nothing, especially if they are able to. That leads me to the first solution: persuade large food corporations and those wealthy enough to devote money to producing healthier and less processed products. This may be a long shot, but by voicing your opinion through letters or campaigns, it lets those companies know what their consumers are interested in, and at the end of the day, they rather adapt to whatever the customer will buy. The second thing that can happen is for food retailers such as grocery stores and the government to try and lower the cost of healthier foods. This can happen through providing subsidies to farmers and local organic businesses and putting taxes on junk and fast foods. If you're wondering, what can I do? There are plenty of options. If you are really passionate about this issue, you could start a business with no processed foods that works towards providing affordable, healthy food. You can also support other businesses that already do. Chez Panisse is a restaurant in Berkeley, California that incorporates food from small local organic farmers and was one of the first places in the midst of the processed food takeover that stood up for fresh, nutritional, and delicious ingredients. Finally, on a consumer level, it is important that we spread the information of the issue of processed foods and what it is doing to us to others so they can come to support the cause, and even making the small decisions in our own lives to buy less processed food can make a big difference if we do it together.